Welcome, Svenja. It's good to have you here. How are you?
Thanks. I'm doing great. Happy International Women's Day, right? This is being aired on International Women's Day.
Absolutely. So happy International Women's Day. Let's go. Let's celebrate. It's a perfect time to talk about what you guys are doing. But before we kind of go into the whole suiting up the new generation of women in business, which is a pretty cool topic, if I must say so myself. I think it's important to we're a sports startup. We got to talk about sports. And a little birdie told me, or maybe it was some sort of social media, I don't know, but you were a former D1 athlete, so you kind of have to share your sports story with us. How did it all begin?
How did it begin? It began quite early. So I was quite young. I played tennis, right? So I went for tennis or played tennis professionally, and it started super young. My parents moved to a new town, and then they started to pick up tennis, and I was always around the courts. I think I had first lesson when I was 4 or whatever, and played my entire childhood. And then I think I was 14 when I was playing some regional tournaments, like Northern Germany or something.
Nice.
Some championship, and there was a scout. And then I got scouted really, really early for the US. And I was quite young in doing my high school in Germany. So I got scouted when I was 14, 15, and then went over to the US and played for Idaho State University. So Big Sky Conference, a D1 school. Started in 2012 and played there for 4 years. And it was really, really cool. Started quite low on the roster. In my first year, I played number 5 and 6 in the starting lineup. And then the last years I played 1 and 2. And it was really, really cool, right? I think everyone knows it a bit that plays high school sports in Europe. It's not as valued or as it is in the US, right? So it was always a hard time combining tournaments with school and all that stuff, and then going over to the US and actually being paid and on a full scholarship and traveling every weekend and having physical therapy and training 6 times a week. And it was really, really cool. And it was a good time. It was hard, it was really, really exhausting, but it was really fun.
No, I can imagine though, just of course, I've been in the US too, but at a later age when my athlete career was over. But I mean, it must be quite incredible just being part of a D1 school as well, that actually have the resources, because obviously that's a huge factor as well, and getting that scholarship. But what was some of the sort of the key lessons you learned from just going leaving Germany, and just going to the US as well, at that age, kind of early?
It was really early. I think it's just, it's just independence, right? I think it's quite good, or for most people it's quite beneficial if you go that far away at a young age. You have to be you have to just grow up pretty quickly, and you're on your own and stuff like that. It was really, really cool. And just the tennis as well, right? You really grow mentally if you play all these games the whole time, have really, really good opponents, right? I used to, if you play on a certain level in Europe, the level is just different in college sport, right? And especially D1. So you grow really, really quickly as an athlete, and also the strength training and stuff like that, right? I've never, in Europe, it's quite technical, right? Tennis is, or how you're taught tennis is really, really technical in Europe. And especially in Germany. And I did we had conditioning weeks, and I would do conditioning a couple times a day, but usually on the tennis court. So it was really cool to add that intense strength training. We were in the gym every morning,
right?
Which was not so great at 5:30, but it was quite cool to just also build that strength up and combine those two. So it was really fun, and a super, super steep learning curve, and just changing as an athlete. It was what all you can do, and there's really no limits, I would say. It really boosted my self-confidence in being able to grow that quickly as an athlete and have that success and stuff like that. So I would say that self-confidence and self-reliance and perseverance as well, right? I think that's also in entrepreneurship nowadays. It's quite useful to be able to pull back kind of from the sports career, to have that perseverance and yeah, just trust yourself and know your abilities.
Right. No, I mean, like it's highly relatable, I guess, and you can bring a lot of what you learned in your early days as an athlete. And I think it's just like having that athlete background, like the commitment, the dedication, like the perseverance, the willing to go further than everyone else. I mean, like I wasn't a D1 athlete, so I can't really put that up, but yeah, no, I know what you're talking about. And now you sort of like started your own little venture, and why don't you share? I mean, like it's gonna be big, we're gonna
It's
gonna
gonna
talk a
be
little bit
huge.
about that, but why don't you tell a little bit about the company, what it's all about, and sort of like how it came to life and what's your sort of like ambitions with the company.
Yes. Yeah, so maybe like also secting from that sports career, right? Like, so I was really, really sports focused. And then obviously like after the sports career, focused a little more then on the business side and economics and did my master's and stuff.
Yeah.
And then started in the corporate world. And
Right.
I actually went into consulting, and you have to dress really like, it's a very male dominated environment. It's very like similar to the sporting industry, right? It's quite male dominated. It's quite ambitious. It's very, very formal. And I went in there and did my first interviews and stuff like that. And there was nothing out there to wear. And I was like, what the heck? Like, what are young professionals supposed to wear? Like, am I supposed to wear only these like super cheap Zara blouses that do not look great if you go to a
Right.
client where you cost the client like a lot of money a day?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or these like boss suits, right? Which is also not great if you're starting out.
Yeah.
And so it was really like starting out in the formal environment there. And then I talked to Marita, and Marita, my co-founder, and
So,
yeah, we had a vacation together, and we were like just talking about it, because I was like, I don't know what to wear. Like, do you have any good brands or any ideas? Like, this is horrible. I feel really uncomfortable in the stuff I'm
yeah.
usually wearing. She was like, no. And then we just asked around, and we're like, okay, I think there's really nothing out there. And then that's why we decided to start saenguin. So we really want to be that go-to place for professional women,
Yeah.
to have that confidence, and just like also be a signaling factor, right? Like, young professional women, or all professional women, are supposed to be there, right? And are
Yeah.
supposed to fulfill their careers and be ambitious, right? Because it's a lot of times also looked down upon if a woman is then too ambitious, right? And
Right.
not likable enough, and all these like different things that you have to navigate a little bit in the professional
Right.
workplace.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's our ambition, to just really be that place and just show the world, like, yeah, young women are supposed to be here, and ambitious women are supposed to be here, and we all are supposed to succeed and have a little more diversity in our leadership and
As
all
they
that
should.
stuff. So
As they
that's
should.
the mission, as they
No,
should,
that's
exactly.
awesome, and I mean, like, I think you touched upon a really interesting point too, of sort of like that starting base of women, right, going into business, and I mean, like, even like the young generation of like, I mean, like, yeah, you want to dress well, especially going into the corporate world and like the business side of things, and there's certain demands too, I guess, in this sector too, of dressing well. And I mean, like, you can't just go right on Boston Burberry and all these crazy
Yeah.
brands. I mean, like, going up with like a student loan and like probably like an entry level salary. I mean, like, I know some corporate roles are paying you really well even early, but you gotta build your way up. So I think you touch upon something of like finding something unique, right, and something that clearly wasn't there. And as a brand focusing specifically on business women, and sort of like, I guess, like the more younger, the people that are sort of like entering the industry as well, what have been some of the key learning lessons of crafting sort of like the perfect piece, I guess, in a sense, so far?
The perfect piece. Um, I think the perfect, like how we approach it, right? Like, sanguine is also, what sanguine means is confident, right? So it's an
Right.
adjective that means confident, and
Yeah.
that's how we also design our pieces. So it's always this notion of confidence, because we want women to just like, I believe women already have the self-esteem, and we have the voice, right?
Yeah.
We just
Yeah.
need to have the room in order to be heard. And
Yeah.
sometimes it can really, we want to just create this jacket and the suit and the blouse and the power casual, right, that can just accompany you into the room, so you're bold enough, and you just have that little extra boost and have that little confidence. So it's really like all our pieces, all our garments are really always focused on confidence and on being bold, and just have that little like extra uniform a little bit, in some sense, of women that just know what they want and they can go after it. And that's what it's supposed to like carry with you in the workplace for everyone, that for all of our customers. And I would say the perfect piece is also just designing pieces that work like also in a functional way, right? Like most designers design for looks, and a lot of times, like especially consulting, especially also the sporting industry, you're about, like if you were basketball, right, coach or whatever, you're on the sidelines, you're in your suit, you need to be able to move, you need to be able to be comfortable. If you're a consultant and you maybe fly at 6 a.m, then you're sitting there forever, and then in the evening you have a client and or whatever, you still need to look nice. So it's really also that functionality that most designers don't even think about or don't even consider, or being able to jump on a bike or whatever, right, in order to bike to work. So I would say those are the two biggest things for me that make a perfect piece. If it's this confidence because it's just a cool style and you feel like yourself, plus the functionality of actually being able to wear it and actually being able to move and do your thing without it being in your way.
And I guess like the functionality aspect of it is kind of important, you know, and I'm thinking, you know, especially for like, I mean, like I even know like myself from like a male perspective, you know, like I want also like, you know, I want comfortable stuff. I'm literally like wearing a new shirt, which is just like have like this tech element to it. So it's just feels like amazing. And I'm like, this is what I want my shirts to be like, you know? And like, I think like having those sort of like, you know, thinking about like the new generation and new future, like you need to have that, you know, comfortable element to it, and just like the, you know, how do you use this garment or this piece, you know, throughout the day, wherever you are going. And I think you brought up like very something interesting too, of like, you know, coaches, you know, of like looking good on the sideline while, you know, having the matches, but also having the functionality and the ability to move, do their task without being like, you know, restrained by any elements like that. And I think that's very, very important. And looking into like, of course, the sport business industry and sort of like the active lifestyle of these women. I mean, like you were you're a former D1 athlete. You know, you probably, you know, did your work or something after as well. And I guess like you wanted to look good. So is this something you kept in mind for the saenguin suits? And if so, sort of like in what way? Like if we think like more about like those sport business, you know, women out there, and that are kind of like, you know, probably going in the gym in the morning, and then you know, have work and maybe like as coaches or you know, on the business side, and then maybe, you know, leaving and want to like have a good time with their friends after or whatever they want to do. Like how is saenguin sort of like working on this?
Yeah, so I think for sure it's also like, I mean, it's us, right? Like, I mean, I'm also in some ways like selfishly designing these pieces which are based like on an active lifestyle, right? Or which can work for athletes and especially people in the sporting industry. Because I mean, I know it myself, right? Like as an athlete, you usually don't have the usual petite like muscle sizes that like all brands design for, right? Like I mean, like nowadays my muscles are not as big anymore, but
I'm sure they're great. Sure they're great.
But when you like, you just do have different shoulders, you do have different calves, you have thighs that don't fit in these like petite jeans that are made for like really small women, right, that don't have those muscle groups. So for sure, in that sense, I'm also like, we're also just selfishly, like also Marita is also like, we're also selfishly just able to or want to provide garments that work for different body types, right, and that are not that restricting. So we actually work a lot with like also what I said in the functionality piece, right, also the versatility, so waistbands and a little more elastic stuff, right, so that it just works for different body types and it's not just for like petite women and whatever. And I think also like in terms of the rest, right, and I think actually I love athletic women and I love designing for them and thinking about them, and just these pieces, I think it's actually like regardless of industry, it's really cool if you can have these pieces that actually give you confidence and that you want to wear from like everywhere, right? That are this
Right.
versatility that you can go to dinner and go to drinks and whatever. Well, hopefully at some point we're allowed again. But yeah.
So, I mean, like it's gonna happen, you know, in
Eventually it
hopefully in
will happen.
2021. Let's see.
Hoping for 2023. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm also very optimistic that we're soon soon back out there. But yeah, for sure. I think that this active lifestyle, right? That's also what makes you feel good. If you have that active lifestyle and if you're
Yep.
bouncing around, if it can work and you're not just wearing cheap polyester that also starts smelling. No, if you, I mean,
Right.
especially if you're coaching or if you're active and you move around, right? Like how many
Right.
blazers that actually work, because they never worked for me, right? Because
Yeah.
you're sweating and whatever, and the cheap plastic is just not going to do it for you. You're not going to keep that on all day. So
No, for
yeah,
sure. But
it's for sure like interesting to consider and interesting to think about how we can make it better.
no, for sure. And I mean, like, just talking a little bit about, like, what is sort of the range of clothing and pieces that you guys are offering so far, and sort of like what has been sort of like the, what is sort of like the range, I guess, as well, in a sense of like, you know, thinking about, okay, how do you make it, you know, relevant and affordable for those people as well? Because I think there's, you know, if there's people tuning in here now and like, you know, listening as well, and I'm sure there are a lot that are just like, okay, this might fit for me, then, you know, where do I find it? Like, what is it? What is the range? And like, like what makes sense, you know, for
Yeah.
someone like these sport business women or these business women to to look good in their business journey.
Yeah, so I think I mean, it's everyone. What we don't ever want to do is tell women what to wear, right? So the goal really of Saenguin is also to just provide cool options that you can really make yourself and that you can find yourself in, and have these like capsule things that can actually work for everyone. So
Yeah.
it's never that we are like, you need to wear this in order to look professional, because
Right.
that's what we've been doing for too long, and it's not really working for anyone, right? And that
Yeah.
way nobody also feels confident. Right now, like our current range, we started quite, I mean, we're also young, right? So we started our first collection last year, and
Yeah.
that's also the one we currently have, which is a lot more formal. So right now we started really with like the formal staple pieces that I believe everyone, it's just nice to have. Like it's really, that's also what our customer says. If you just have this one, like for example, I'm wearing like the oversized black blazer, or if you just have one like black suit or our navy suit and it's just ready to go, right?
Yeah.
Whatever happens, like if you have an online even Zoom meeting and you just can throw something on, so you just look just a little bit more presentable and a little more professional, it goes a long way, right? Like it's actually, we sometimes underestimate how much influence it actually makes if you seem a little older, right? Which is also always in a male-dominated industry for young women. It's sometimes you feel really young and you feel really female, so it's sometimes nice to just have that little professional
Right.
kick. And I say like, but whatever people feel comfortable in, right? Like if it's power casual, that's going to be our next collection, which is coming out in April. So we have a lot of products launching in April, and it's going to be all this like power casual, which is also going to be a little more fun, like a little more jumpsuits, a little more like spring vibes and like cool blouses and stuff. So it can also really, I'm in love with this power casual, right? Because you can really dress it up or down with like a jean, or if you want to like go full on and just throw like business pants on, then it's like a complete professional, right? So this power casual, I feel like can always work. And it's really, it's such a nice like thing to go to, because you look really, really sophisticated and presentable, and like you really have your own style, but it's actually quite easy tweaks. And it's just like good quality pieces that are good and affordable, and it's just easy like it's a good easy hack. And that's also ultimately what we want, right? We don't want to have people like standing in front of their closets thinking for 20 minutes about what to wear, right? We want to be the capsule that's just easy. Like it should just, so people don't have to think about it for too long and can just go after the career they want, right? Because that's ultimately what we want to support, that women just go after the careers and don't think about dressing for hours and hours, because they just have something that works. So yeah, I would say that's always a nice, I'm a big fan of this like slightly sophisticated power casual.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, makes a total sense. I think it's like your focus as well on making it more, how can I say, personal, I guess, like sort of like, you know, tweaking it based on your premises and what you like and what you know, kind of like your personal preferences. I think it makes a lot of sense, right? Because every woman out there, every person out there is different, right? And they have different, you know, goals, different ambitions, different objectives, and different personalities and styles that they like, and sort of like tweaking that, but still, have sort of like the foundation, I guess, as you were talking about. But let's talk about, like, as we both know, being an entrepreneur is challenging. I don't know. I think we can
Is
just,
it?
conclude with that.
It's been a very smooth ride over here.
I mean, I'm like, everything is perfect, I guess, right? Yeah, there's
Everything is
no
perfect.
challenges. There's no challenges being an entrepreneur.
Um,
We said
no.
it, especially during a pandemic. There's no challenges at all. But on a serious note, like, what have you learned, like, sort of like so far being an entrepreneur during the pandemic, specifically, and how have you sort of like overcome those challenges that you've been facing so far?
Yeah, I'm not sure I overcame them yet, but
You're working on it, though.
we're working on it, trying to stay
No,
strong.
I'm sure you have.
I think it's interesting, no, because I think entrepreneurship in itself, it's always like, it's supposed to be hard. Like it's an act of creation, right? So I think it's supposed to be hard. You're supposed to have all these challenges. But it's always a lot of uncertainty. I think no matter when and in what economic condition, in what like weather, whatever you start, right? Even if everything is perfect, you have a lot of uncertainty with starting any endeavor.
Yeah.
And that aspect I found like the most challenging with the pandemic, right? Because that uncertainty just gets doubled and tripled and 10x, right?
Yeah.
Because you're just like, what the heck is happening? Like you can't even like, how long are lockdowns going on for,
Right.
supply chains, right? Because we have a physical product. So it's also supply chains. We produce also in developing countries, and we have really cool NGO partners. I haven't talked about that, but we also produce very sustainable and all that stuff. And there's a lot of women in our supply chain. We have female-run factories and all that stuff, and they're really struggling to keep everyone employed, right? So it's a lot. Like it's a lot of uncertainty. It's a lot of challenges on all parts. And I mean, the biggest lesson is again resilience, right? It's really that's always the number one lesson, and I think that's especially what makes entrepreneurs or breaks them, right? It's if you continue finding solutions, and then the next stone gets thrown at you, and you just continue finding solutions instead of like putting your head in the sand. Right. And I think if you just need to continue doing that. And I think that's, if you need a day off and just sit in the dark room for a minute, and that's what that day takes, right? Yeah. And then you pick it back up the next day. But I would say that's for sure the biggest challenge, just not knowing when to be able, like, just also production planning for us, like how are logistics, because over Christmas, like logistics just in Europe also completely broke, not even just logistics in the supply chain, but then also from warehouse to customer, right? Yeah. And obviously we're in the business of business wear. So even though we design for we design for professional women no matter where they work, but it's obviously still like business wear, right? And people are not at home, and then like talking about the whole topics and creating products that are more casual and creating products that work a little better. So there's I think the challenges of uncertainty and the challenges of being more agile than you would ever have to be otherwise, I think were the biggest. But I think it also makes for a very, very strong business case. Yep. Like we always say that, but if you survive 20 and 2021 as a business wear company, I think that I don't know what else is gonna
you can survive anything, after that.
I hope, I really hope so, and I think that's really, really true. And it's also made, like, I think we've reviewed a lot more stuff more thoroughly than we otherwise would have. Right. We have like looked at revenue streams in a different way. We have created community in a different way, and just everything around, like I think the whole setup was a lot more solid than it would have otherwise been. And we're just also a lot more agile and ready to change directions, just because we've done it. Like from the get-go, we had to change direction, we had to be agile right away, like from the first year, because we never existed before a pandemic, right? So we got born into right away being super agile. So
I would say it's a really, really valuable point. And I think, like, at the end of the day, it's adapt or die, right?
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to, you know. It's
It really is.
especially as a startup, you know, it's like literally adapt or die. You know, if you don't adapt to the challenges and the elements that are facing you, then you know you're probably just gonna run out of cash or out of resources or time, and that's sort of like what every, you know, startup and entrepreneur is facing. And I mean, like we've been doing the same thing. You know, it's at a different, you know, perspective, but still a lot of the challenges are the same, right? Like if you don't, you know, go out there and you listen and you try to like figuring out how do we solve, you know, the current challenges that are here in order to overcome it. And I mean, like I completely agree, the uncertainty factor, like that's a huge element. So I mean, like from my side, I was like, I just tried to focus as much as I can on what I can do something with, and then I ignore I don't ignore it, but I just like don't spend as much time on it anymore. Because I remember like a lot in the beginning, I was like, you know, my emotions were like so up and down because I was like impacted by every little thing that was happening, right? I was like, okay, we got a meeting, hooray, and then like something shit happened, and I was like, you know, up and down, up and down. I was like, now I'm just like, you know, trying to like balance it out way more, and that's like essentially based on what you're talking about, right? That's sort of like uncertainty. And
I think we're also, because we're on a very similar timeline, right? I think usually within the entrepreneurship journey, I think everyone gets to the point where you just have to detach a little bit the personal, because it's so personal, no? Like it's really your baby and you're the face and you're like, it's almost like one-on-one. But I feel like because we started in like kind of rough times, I think we had to learn that lesson a little earlier of not taking everything so personal, not being so like intertwined, right? Like to just be able to also still be a very valid human being without that has like we have value in itself, without like the ups and downs, and like especially the downs that are a little more severe in a freaking pandemic and then lockdown and then economic crisis, right? And I think that it's probably a good, I think every entrepreneur learns it eventually. I think usually it comes a little later, because in the beginning it's just it's a lot more
we just sped up the process.
Exactly. So I think, I mean, we're just it's always, I think it's always this, like my mentor, I have a really, really cool mentor who's a huge businessman from London, and he also says like it's really like this huge act of creation, right? And it always involves sacrifices and pain. You just have to be able to manage that pain, and the earlier you learn that and how you manage that sacrifice and what you are able to give without losing yourself completely, then you're on a good road. But it's for sure a challenge.
No, I mean, like that's pretty much spot on, and he sounds like a smart guy and mentor to have with you. I mean, like it's good to have people like that around you, you know, like that can guide you a little bit and be part of the journey. Because I mean, like we're both young, we were, you know, kind of like starting this pretty early, and I think that goes back, you know, to our final question. I mean, like I can't believe we're almost, you know, at the end of this conversation. I mean, like we could probably go on for like hours, but I mean, I'm gonna spare all the women out there so they don't have to listen to me more than necessary. But you've been obviously getting a lot of tips from like your mentors and people around you. But from your side, like what tips do you have for any inspiring, you know, sport business women that are trying to find their journey in the business world, especially in today's situation? Like what kind of advice or guidance can you give to them from your side?
That's a great question. I think like for everyone, maybe like I can split it up a bit. For the people that are really just starting out and are really like maybe a bit unsure of where to go and what to do next, I would say don't be afraid of just experimenting. I feel like I see it so often also, like I'm also the mentor of a couple of people that are just getting out of university, and everyone often thinks like the first job has to be the perfect one, right? Or you have to like land this grand thing. And especially if you're young and just graduated, right? You have so much life left. Like there's so much time to just experiment, and all this unnecessary pressure, especially like from a lot of big business goals, right? It's like you have to land this like insane corporate name, and then you're good, and you have to do that all before you're 24, and it gets set, right? And it's really, I would say, just experiment, like just see what, if you have really no idea what interests you, just see where, like, what conversations are you having where your heart beats a bit faster, right? Like follow your passion a little bit, like follow what interests you, follow where you want to speak up. If there's certain topics in class, certain subjects where you just notice yourself like raising your hand a little more, right? Like talking a little more, like follow that. It doesn't have to be like, it doesn't have to be this burning passion and purpose that everyone always talks about, right? It starts simpler and it becomes a burning passion and purpose, right? And it grows into that. It doesn't just from the get-go is there. So that I would say just experiment and try to get in tune with yourself and don't take it too serious, is I would say what I would say to people that are a bit uncertain. For the people that know where they want to go and maybe are already in the corporate world or are in their jobs in the sporting environment and are doing it, I would say don't hold back. I see a lot of like also in the corporate job I was at, right? Because it can sometimes be very daunting if you're usually in rooms with old white men, right? If that's your normal environment, that was my normal environment for a very long time. And it's sometimes like a bit difficult to speak up, or it's difficult to really like show everything you've got, because it's obviously like intimidating if you have if everyone looks different from you, or if everyone is a lot older and a lot more experienced and you feel like you don't have that much to say. But I would just like don't hold back, because there's so many, like especially women that have made it, and there's a reason you're in that job, right? And there's a reason you're in that role, and there's a reason people trust you with that responsibility. So just show them and don't hold back. And there's nothing wrong with being really ambitious and just going for it. And there's like my biggest nightmare, we're actually doing a huge campaign this month on ambition and likability, right? Because there's this negative correlation about being liked and being ambitious as a woman in the workplace. And I hate that with like all my guts, because especially athletes, right? Especially people that have this like little sports drive in them. I feel like sport really brings that out of you, right? That ambition and that grit, but also obviously everyone else that's not an athlete. But don't be afraid of that, especially for women. Like don't shy away from that ambition. Follow that ambition and just go after what you want.
No, it is a great advice. I think it really sums up, this conversation alongside with what saenguin like stands for, right? Sort of like, building that confidence, and like, I mean, like not necessarily building the confidence, but like, elevating the confidence of women out there, and be confident, and like believe in yourself, and like all the stuff that you're doing, it's for a reason. It's because you prove value, you're doing your part, and that's why you're there. It's like everything happens for a reason, and it's about creating value wherever you are and in your journey. And I mean, like with that, Svenja, I think I'm just gonna thank you so much for taking the time and for sharing your story with us. And with every video, every little thing we do, we always finish with "Vi snakkes."
Vi snakkes.
There you go. It's perfect. All right. Thank you so much, Svenja.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure, and I wish you all the best for 2021 and many, many years, and we'll stay in touch.